What's up everyone, and welcome back to another HateWatchers episode review. Today we're going over the 11th and penultimate episode of Star Wars Andor, called Daughter of Ferrix. Let's dive right into the breakdown. Spoilers ahead. We open up on a cliffside where a bloodied Andor, aka Keith, and Melshi are doing some rock climbing, while avoiding Imperial detection after their recent jailbreak. Melshi wants to quit, but Andor motivates him by telling him there's some girls at the top, but they have to get up there quick.
They're leaving. They're leaving. They're leaving. They're leaving.
Moving to Ferrix, the fire hydrant droid is trembling as we find out Maarva has died of climate change. The daughters of Ferrix take Maarva's body out into the street to warn others that the danger is real. Keith and his new buddy are crawling around after having eaten the wrong kind of mushrooms upon their escape from prison. They're seeing some weird little creatures during their hallucinations. Remembering they're on a mission to escape this planet, they sprint toward the first ship they see, but get caught by intergalactic superhero Spider-Man. Moving to Coruscant, Miss Stick-in-Her-Butt is getting local intel on Ferrix about Maarva's funeral, which sounds like the hottest event of the season, and the ISB is hoping that everyone goes. The creatures are becoming all too real as they're threatening to turn Keith and Melshi into the Empire for a reward. But Keith and Melshi realize it's all been in their minds, so they hop into the ship and take off, headed for planet Miami. Cutting back to Coruscant, Clea is trying to get some honest work done when Vex stops by Luthen's shop. Vex wants to see Luthen right away, but Clea knows they need to cover their overhead and tries to sell her some junk first. Vex is like, "Listen bitch, I pulled off this huge heist for him. Just tell him Andor's mom died." And Clea's like, "Whatever gets you out of here fastest, biatch." Back on Ferrix, Fire Hydrant Droid is sad and doesn't want to leave Maarva's house. There's some irony in the fact that this Fire Hydrant Droid acts so much like a dog. I guess it's true what they say, you are what pees on you. Elsewhere, Bix is traumatized after being tortured. Her interrogation continues, and while it took an entire ISB investigation team days to accomplish, they were successful in making her unattractive. Sad days. The Empire is asking her about Anto Krieger, who it turns out is a chubby biker, but Bix just breaks down in tears thinking of her past beauty. Back at Mon Mothma's house, she's hitting the white wine pretty hard, and she's given up on motherhood as she watches her daughter getting initiated into a cult.
Old ways hold us, safe in the knot, in the binding, bound against the wind, tied to shore.
Mon tells Vex how her money laundering scheme came crashing down after Aldhani and put her on the Empire's watch list. She needs 400,000 credits to make her problems go away, and her current solution is to pawn off her daughter like property. On the other side of town, Cyril's mom tells him he's got a phone call and to quit tugging on his pecker and come answer it. It's a FaceTime call from the bowling ball of a sergeant he ran the raid on Ferrix with. Bowling Ball passes on info that Andor's mother kicked the bucket based on her Our Time dating account going inactive, and that Andor might show up to the funeral. We move to planet Miami, where Keith is already breaking into his old stash looking for the sweet taste of freedom and mescaline. Side note, check out this guy. Look familiar? We're gonna do a separate video on this potential cameo. On Segra Milo, Luthen's come to meet with Saw Gerrera, but he's a racist and doesn't trust this black guy to hold on to his stuff. Saw is all jacked and jitty, saying he'll do the job with Anto Krieger, but Luthen says the ISB will be waiting for Krieger. Saw surmises that Luthen is ISB, or has someone inside the ISB, and then goes manic, realizing Luthen surely has an informant here in his crew. Luthen says to Two Tubes, "Hey, come here, I got a secret to tell you." But it's a trick, and he grabs his gun, pointing it at Saw to get him to listen. Saw now sees reason and agrees to go along with Luthen's plan. Returning to the slums of Coruscant, Cyril's mom is heading out to protest a new Waffle House opening up nearby, and Cyril steals $20 from her nightstand. Back in Luthen's shop, Luthen and Clea are talking in code via communicator about intelligence assets when the connection breaks down. Luthen's ship is being tracked and jammed by an Imperial Cantwell-class arrestor cruiser, and the imps hail Luthen's vessel for identification. The arrestor locks Luthen's ship in its tractor beam while they run the ID, after connecting this vessel to notorious druggie Crackhead Clem, aka Keith. Luthen's phony ID passes the sniff test, but the imps want to practice their training anyway and prepare to board the ship. After being fully primed, Luthen launches his countermeasures, a barrage of rockets that tear apart the ship's tractor beam generator. 3 TIE fighters and a TIE bomber are dispatched and begin firing at Luthen's Fondor. Luthen smokes the 4 TIEs and blasts into hyperspace, and this thing might be my new favorite ship. The Imperial commander's like, well, fuck? Back on Ferrix, Andor is calling to tell Maarva he's okay, and this guy named Zan is like, that old bitch croaked, bro, and Andor is sad, but doesn't tell Melshi what's happened. Melshi wants to split up and tell the galaxy about what's going on so they can make a difference. Keith makes one final drug deal and looks out over the ocean, briefly questioning his choices in life, and the episode comes to an end. Well, we've reached that point in the video where we have to decide if this episode was a great watch or a hate watch. This was a great watch, even if it was a slight step back from last week's episode. On its own, it might not be great, but it's a solid continuation of a great story. Luthen's interaction with the Imperial vessel felt more Star Wars-y than the rest of what we've seen in this show. Him trying to pass off phony credentials was reminiscent of Han from the OG trilogy. And even though we're not huge fans of Star Wars Rebels, there's obvious similarities between his ship, the Fondor, and the Ghost. But even the two Narkinians that Andor and Melshi tried to steal the ship from, Luthen's brief meeting with Saw, it all just felt more like classic Star Wars than the rest of the show has. It was nice to get a little hit of those familiar Star Wars feelings after such a tense, character-driven first season, and we think this was excellently timed, being done when there's a natural lull between last week's high-paced episode and next week's finale. Now, I don't know how much we were designed to care, but we didn't really feel much of anything at Maarva's passing. We've never really spent enough time with her or really seen her character fleshed out beyond her flashback of finding Andor and being a sad old woman who doesn't want to leave Ferrix. To be fair, we don't think the show was very invested in making us be upset about her passing, and it's more of a plot development designed to bring about a confrontation at the funeral in the season finale. Also, we're pretty quickly losing interest in Mon Mothma. Her story arc is simply not interesting enough to be dragged out across this many episodes. She's had the same problem for too long now, and one scene each episode of her being dismayed or sad about it isn't enough to make us care. Save for something big changing in the finale, limiting this story arc of hers to 1 or 2 episodes would have hit much better. To end on a high note, the Fondor that Luthen's been flying around in is badass. We got just a peek in this episode of some of the things this little spy craft is capable of, and we get the feeling that there's a lot more tricks under the hood. Fingers crossed that we get to see more of this thing in action, in this season or the next. Thanks for making it to this point in the video. Let us know in the comments below. Did this episode feel a little bit more like Star Wars to you? Did you give a shit at all about Maarva? Please remember to like the video if you liked it, and hit that subscribe button to join us for the season finale of Andor next week. Thank you again, and we'll catch you on the next one.